We have Kiko and Mariano from the Spanish media outlet El País. So Spain was one of the first and hardest hit countries by COVID-19 in the beginning of the year. And at the same time, newsrooms nationwide were also finding new ways to cope with huge amounts of data, remote work, restrictions to reporting, etc. So Kiko and Mariano will tell us how El País reacted to these new circumstances and how they came to the point of producing successful data visualizations and stories like A Room, a Bar, and a Classroom, which was published last month and became quite, I guess we can say, an internet sensation. Hola, Kiko and Mariano, bienvenidos.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
So thanks also for the invitation. I'm really glad of being here. I'm going to talk about our work at El País during the coronavirus crisis. I will talk first about the data and analytical part of it, and then Mariano will talk about the visuals. So the first thing to take into account is that, as you probably know, Spain was hit really soon and really hard. So we have started working with the coronavirus data quite soon. We published our first story, the data story, on March 3rd. It was basically a story when we were saying the data says that COVID is not the flu. That, as you probably remember, this was a topic in February, so we were talking about that. And then our second piece was on March 8th, and it was our first dashboard. It was a country-level tracker because we were very interested in following how cases were increasing, were being multiplied country by country. So I think this dashboard, published on March 8th, was one of the first in a big outlet. And the reason was that we were hit very soon. And one of the interesting things is that we have no reference there. So it was, of course, our first pandemic, but we haven't a lot of other media in other countries to take a look at their work. So we had to improvise. And this is one of the charts that we used in that first story. And I think it's still quite good. This is still relatively good because it's a line chart that I think is the best chart you can use to follow the epidemic. We were so in many countries, and now that seems obvious because we know that we are in a pandemic. But the pandemic was not official in March 8th. So we were in somehow anticipating that cases were going to appear in several countries. And probably the most important thing, we use a logarithmic scale. So this was very useful at the beginning of the epidemic because the most important message we have in March is that an epidemic is an exponential phenomena. So the cases were not that scary at first. We have 2 cases in Spain, maybe 10, 20, 50, 100, but this was not that scary. But the thing is that should be scary because that was an exponential growth. Cases were being multiplied, and that will lead us to an explosion of cases as we saw. And the most important phrase in our piece was that here is Europa está en fase de crecimiento exponencial. We were saying Europe is in exponential growth. So after that, we have written a lot for these 8 months and with quite success. Right now, 9 of the top most viewed articles published at El País this year were data stories, and we are a small team of 3 people, so this was quite a good result. The work I'm going to present has been mainly done by Daniel Grasso and Borja Andrino and myself. So some lessons I have learned during this month of intense work. I will start talking about the charts. the most important chart to cover the pandemic, I think, is the line chart, this kind of line chart, because they provide two very important pieces of information. The first one is they said how many cases, how many admissions, how many deaths are in a particular region. This is important, but the most important thing to put in a chart is the trend. The most important piece of information is to know if cases are spreading or not. And the line chart is a very, very compact way of showing those things. The situation is good, bad, or it's probably good, bad, or not that bad, but how is the trend? And this is the most important chart to show. We also use small multiples because an epidemic is a local geographic phenomenon. So you have to show how is the situation in a particular region, in a particular country. So small multiples were very useful to do that. And then we use a different chart to answer probably the most important question regarding the crisis, which is how can we measure the severity of the crisis, how bad things had been. And to show that, we are using this kind of charts with a total excess of deaths. It's how many deaths are occurring that are unexpected, that are abnormal in this year. And in this case, I think it's very important to use the total accumulation of deaths, because the peaks are somehow misleading. We have suffered that in Spain in this second wave, because if you look at the small chart that you have at the bottom, where España appears, you can see that the peak in March was huge, and the situation now doesn't seem that bad. The peaks are not comparable. So people tend to think that, okay, the second wave is not that bad. But the thing is that we have no total lockdown now, so we have been in a second wave for several months, and deaths are accumulating day by day. And the chart at the top is trying to show that. If you look at the chart, the big one, you can see that in Spain we had 48,000 deaths during the first wave, but in the second wave we are now around 25,000, probably 30,000. So sadly, the severity of the first and second wave are perfectly comparable right now. And I think that this chart it's important to show that. Finally, the last thing about charts that I want to mention is that tables have been very useful, because tables are a way of putting many variables and many regions in a compact way. And since the coronavirus is a complex phenomenon, it's a good idea to put several variables there. And I like them better than maps for coronavirus in general. We can discuss this in the questions. I like maps a lot, but I think that in this case they were not that useful. And yeah, 3 more lessons, a bit more abstract ones, besides the charts. I think the first one is, you were talking about that coding is for journalists. We have been talking a lot about having people able to code in a newsroom in the last years, but I would say that it's even more important to have journalists that are able to code. I think one of the characteristics of our small team, we are 3 people, is that 2 of us were coders before than writers. And I think that makes us quite fast. We were maybe discussing in a meeting like this, we were discussing an hypothesis, an idea, we have some topic that we wanted to explore, and we could immediately move to data exploration. We open an R terminal and we start looking at the data in real time. And I think that this process was really efficient. And I think it's one of the strengths of our work during these months. The second idea I want to highlight is that the most important objective that we had in mind was to show the data to the readers. Why? Because we discovered very early that readers were eager to see the data by themselves. They wanted to know how was the situation in their country, in the region. They wanted to compare with other regions, but they clearly wanted to see that by themselves. Probably because they wanted to draw their own conclusions. So we have to choose the relevant variables, but it was very important to show the data very clearly and very fast. This was our first objective. The second one, which is my favorite topic, so I will be brief about it, is that data alone is not sufficient. We had to join or to combine the data with the analytical part of the problem. And I think that I understand our work more as analytic as journalism. I think it's more about data, more about analysis than data. And that implies several things. It means that you have to take a scientific stance. I think that we have to put in our pieces this kind of approach. We have to write about evidences, about caveats, about hypotheses, and put that in a piece. I think that's important, and that means also that we have to embrace uncertainty. So we are writing about very complex topics, and of course we don't have the answers. Maybe we are writing this week or the following weeks about if we have to cancel Christmas or not. Who knows if we have to cancel Christmas or not? We don't have the answer to that question. So I think we don't need the answer. We need to put the story, and readers are okay with uncertainty. They know that you are just a guy trying to explain a thing, but that you don't have the answers to the difficult questions. So I think that we have to write about difficult, complex topics, but of course embrace the uncertainty that there is around. And then, of course, it's important to let readers draw their own conclusions. I like to put our judgments in a piece. I think we have to put our judgment as a way of transparency. You know, this is how I see things because of this or that. But of course, you can disagree. And I think that one last thing is that it's important when we are writing about complex topics to write in simple terms. Why? Because it seems obvious, but I think that we forgot that sometimes. It's easier to explain complex things when you write in simple and with clarity. So this is my let's say here. And finally, just to end my part of the presentation, I have an optimistic message. Maybe it's too optimistic, but I think that this is not a COVID thing. I think that the success that we have had with data and complexity during the last months is not a COVID thing. It's a signal of something that is changing in journalism. I think we are covering more complex stuff, big topics which are complicated, that we try to present in an approachable way, because there is a market for it. I think that there are readers that want to read about these complex topics that they are interested in. They know that you don't have the answers. They want your best try, and if there is a market for it, and I think that it is, we should write more of these stories. And finally, just to end, I think that the example that Mariano will talk about now is a perfect example of this, because it's a story about a very complex phenomena, the transmission of a virus that is about a science that we don't have one year ago. It's a complex story, but it's presented in a very useful and a very interesting storytelling. So I think it's a good example of success, and I will let him continue here. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for inviting me. I'm Mariano Zafra. I am the graphic editor, storytelling and graphics editor in El País. I work alongside Kiko Llaneras because our team we have a graphic and visual specialist and also data specialist, and we work together in different stories. Sometimes data analysis stories and sometimes only visual stories explaining a lot of kind of stories. This story is the next, please, next slide, and another one, please. This is a story about how the coronavirus is spread through the air. Maybe now we are listening about this concept, no? The aerosols and the transmission through the air like a normal thing. But if we think 3 or 4 months ago, we didn't know about the aerosols, and now has become probably the most important thing about the transmission. And I'm gonna think about the keys of this, not only the story, but about the concept. This story, we are sure that this is the most visited article in El País history, with more than 20 million that we have counted, but also has been translated to 10, 12 languages, and we realized that this was important when we saw the people consulting this story, and we share the graphics, the images and the text with other media who made their own version of the graphic, and probably reaching 30, 40 million people. I don't know, it's like a virus itself, this story, explaining simple, complex, like Kiko has said, complex things in a simple way. And why? If you please, the next, okay. This is the question. Since the beginning of the pandemic, the question was about coughing and sneezing, no? The droplets that we send to other people, we can infect in that way, only with droplet. And all the measures from the CDC and the World Health Organization has been in that way, no? Like try to avoid that droplets in the air with mask and I don't remember the word. Sorry, yes, indeed, glasses or how do you say? What's it called?
A mask.
No,
or any kind of mask or
screens. Maybe indeed, transparent screens, face sealed. Thank you. And now we know that this is not the main vehicle or main route of transmission. And why we did this infographic. I mean, I think this is the most important graphic probably I have made in my life. And it's important not because of the audience. It's because now I know that there are people, because people have told me here in Spain that they are open the windows and avoiding closed rooms and closed bars because they have read or see this infographic. And I mean, wow, I mean, people is taking action because they have seen this here in Spain, and also scientists talking about this graphic in Twitter, in people not through the web of El País, through WhatsApp, in their personal WhatsApps, their personal nets, they are sharing this infographic because look at this, how easy we can see how the coronavirus is transmitting. And this, I mean, is very important. If you please go to the, and this is the question, right? We talk with Jimenez, is a aerosol scientific specialized in this, in the behavior of aerosols, and they told that more or less this is the question, not that we are emitting infectious doses called quanta when we are only breathing 10 times more. We emit 10 times more number of particles when we are talking and 50 times more when we are shooting. And this image, I think, is very clear, and you can see that how the room is full of this kind of particles, and that this is dangerous. And this is the question, no? If you go to the next. But I think this graphic, I have copied this image from the World Health Organization today, and another one from in the CDC, and they are also talking and preventing us about how the coughing and sneezing is the main vehicle of transmission, and you have to maintain the safe the distance, the social distance, and also wearing mask, and also cleaning, and they are not already talking about the aerosol transmission at all. And I think, I mean, in the next, you can see how since the beginning of the pandemic, there are tons of outbreaks where one single infected person with COVID has infected dozens of people far from the person infected, like in this office in, I think it's in, I don't remember, but this is a real case when only one infected. There was an outbreak with more than 79 infected in the same room. I mean, it's not. I can't understand how if it's only one infected, how can he infect one people 100 meters from him? And since the beginning of the pandemic, we have been asking ourselves, I mean, it's not very clear how can we infect this kind of infections. It's not very clear how can we have only by sneezing. It's like, I mean, I remember when if I go through in the street and I see someone sneezing or coughing in front of me, and there are a lot of people infected that they don't remember where they got infected. It's like there is something strange in here that has to be explained. And in the next, we talk with Jose Luis Jimenez. This is probably the best specialist of aerosols in the world, working in the University of Colorado, where he leads a group of scientists, more than 100 scientists, talking about the importance of this kind of transmission. Indeed, we talk. He made a tool, a simulation of how the transmission of the aerosols is the vehicle, and I mean we talked to him, and we made the Javier Salas is a journalist of science in El País, the scientifics and me, and we talked together to make this piece. I think this was the key of the graphic, no? The counting with the vision of the specialist, like Jose Luis Jimenez, the science journalist like Javier Salas, that he has been publishing and writing about the transmission since the beginning, and he understands, like he has a whole a big picture of all the things that scientists and organizations have say about the pandemic, and visual journalist like me that can concrete visually these messages. And I think this is the key from this infographic, that is working together visual journalist, science journalist, or journalist specialized in whatever kind of story, like politics or whatever, and the scientist, the people who know the most what we are talking about. I think the success of this story, we are gonna remember this story, and we are still analyzing this story, the success, and trying to imitate the success. And we know that the success is that, no, that we convey information clearly, important message that help people make the decisions. I think this is the most important thing about the presentation. Thank you. I think.
Hi, hola Mariano, hola Kiko.
Hola.
How are you?
Hola.
We have a few questions from the audience, so I will start asking you. This one is from Tamo van Lochen. Tamo asks, what tools do you use to make visualizations?
Tools.
Yes.
The tools, mainly in this case, for this story, is most a visual story, no, right? And we need tools like to make the drawings. Is the most popular is Adobe Illustrator. Is where we make the sketches, where we try to imagine the story. Other tools we did the animations is After Effects, and also another 3D Studio Max to make the 3D images. But this is only to make the drawings and the sketches. There are also another important part, that is having prepared the layouts. For example, this scrolly telling, when you change the images while you are scrolling with the finger in your mobile, we have already prepared that tool. It's called scrolly telling, and we can reuse constantly. Indeed, we have used that technique in other stories, but this is the key. No, having prepared that tool, you can use that quickly. Indeed, I know coding, but I'm not so good coding. If you have this kind of tools, you can make stories quickly and with all the power of the technology, for example.
We have one question also from Lisa Dupuy. Lisa asks you, in covering COVID, I've noticed a continuing discussion in newsroom. Which data do we use for our analysis, like daily numbers, number of infections or death, and how do we explain about that to the audience?
First of all, that's one of the things to take into account. We continuously are discussing which is the most relevant variable at each moment. So I think that the most important variable is the number of cases, how many cases there is in a region, the new number of cases. We have 200 cases yesterday. Smooth it, because we know the data is noisy, so we have to maybe take into account 1 week to make a data point. And this is the most useful data every day. But the thing is, the number of cases detected depends not only in the evolution of the virus, but also in the detection protocol. How many tests are we employing and that. So we typically combine the number of cases with the number of admissions. How many people is arriving to the hospitals, because that is easier to measure. So these are the variables. And how to explain that to the audience? I think that you have to explain, like I have done here. I think that we have to put this kind of details in the stories. It's not enough to say cases is the best variable to follow the virus. We need this because of that. I think this kinds of reason with the reader and provide and give the arguments or the judgments you are doing. It's important because it's the way of being trustful.
We have here one question from Carlo. Carlo asks, I live in Belgium and I saw your animated infographic in National Belgian television. Did you get paid for all the uses that were made of your brilliant work, or it went around out of your control?
It went totally out of our control, totally out. I mean, maybe 10 different newspapers and webs asked for permission about publishing the story, and the director of El País decided that, I mean, this story is important. It's more important than the business, the newspaper and everything. And I mean, it's something that have to be shared. And we share for free all the assets. Indeed, there are 5 or more newspapers that have made their own versions with different text, or with the same graphics and different text, and everything for free. I mean, I think it's good, right? I mean, is the signal that we have made something important, and we have our little made our little contribution of in the pandemic. And for us is, I mean, for me, I'm very happy only with that. I don't know if this article is gonna be rewarded with some journalist awards, but I don't care. For me, I'm very happy only with this, no, to have made something useful.
It was for the common good. We have here the last question from Amandre, and Amandre asks you, is El País planning to enlarge its data team after this huge success, as it happened with the Washington Post, for instance?
Of course, I want to enlarge our team before and after the pandemic. So, of course, we would like to do it. I think that it's not a question only for El País. I think that the question is, how many developers are going to be incorporated to the newsroom. I think we were talking about tools. We are working mostly with R stats, and of course I would like to have more people around. And the first person I have to make my arguments to whom is to Mariano, which is the boss.
The boss. I mean, we are asking for analytics, and we already know that our stories, not only data stories, all kind of visual stories in El País, 50 stories, the most visited stories in El País, more than 20 are the most visited and have made millions of and indeed, the Washington Post, they realized that, and they also published another very important, very, very popular story about, in the beginning, about the transmission and the outbreaks, and how the coronavirus, how is the R factor, right? I can't remember, but because of
the dynamics of the spreading, and how you need a lockdown to stop the spreading of the virus, and it was super useful piece.
Yes, and only because of that story they have hired 14 people, I think, and we are trying to say our directors that is the way. It's worthy to invest in more visual people. Fortunately, we are crossing a very economic hard times, and in this year we can hire, but we are trying to incorporate new hirings to the next year. We hope that we could hire more.
Thank you.
I just one small comment. It's very small. I think that it's one of the difficulties is that our pieces are still quite expensive, because we need several people to work on it, and we spend quite some time. So one of the challenges I face is how I can invest in a story that I can share not only tomorrow in the newspaper that I'm going to publish tomorrow, but something that deserves to be read in a week. And that is the challenge for us. I think that's the key question to ask for more people.
Thank you. Thank you for the explanation, Kiko and Mariano. Thank you for sharing this amazing work here with us today. Have a great day.
Thank you. Have a good day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.